Hi, everyone. My name is Philippa Hughes, and I am the director of Looking for America. In this project, we travel all over the country and curate art shows in which we ask people, what does it mean to be American? And then we organize large dinners across the political spectrum, asking people the same question and to interact with art and really have meaningful conversations with each other. And it's been a really amazing experience. But we thought we'd try something new running in the run up to the election. We wanted to talk to Americans in battleground states. And we partnered with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, a German political foundation that is interested in hearing from real Americans, unfiltered by media, unfiltered by the things that politicians are saying. What do real Americans in battleground states have to say? And this week we're in Pennsylvania. And so I'm excited to talk to two amazing Pennsylvanians. So I'll have them introduce themselves to you. Mustafa, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Awesome. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Mustafa Nuur, and I am a resident in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I'm a small business owner and the founder of an organization called Bridge, which is an online platform that you can book cross-cultural experiences with local refugees and immigrants to learn about their culture and their story. And this has been an interesting year for us. So I'm looking forward to share my opinions and talk to you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, Mustafa. Tom, will you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Tom Murphy. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Have all my life, pretty much, have traveled a great deal. I work right now for the Urban Land Institute, which is a real estate organization that promotes smart growth and good development, and about 45,000 members. Prior to that, I was mayor of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining today. I think that we have to start with the vice presidential debate, which was last night. I was hoping that it was going to have some fireworks and, we'd have something to really dig into. What did you all think? Any first impressions, any impressions at all about what you heard last night?
Go ahead, Mustafa.
I think I didn't learn anything new from it was very expected from both parties as far as the results of the outcome of the night. But I was very discouraged in the continuation of how the debate was being conducted, the disruption, the interjection between the candidates. So I feel like as a voter, I didn't really get the opportunity to get more policy this time around. I mean, the presidential election was more chaotic than the debate from the presidential debate was more chaotic than last night, but still it felt little unprepared for as far as sharing the policies that we want to learn about. So that was my little opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't really learn anything new.
Yeah.
What did you think, Tom?
They were just playing it safe. After the last debate, I think that for both of them, they did not want to cause any fireworks, or and it is what it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And although I was thinking about Mike Pence, though, it's kind of hard for him to defend a lot of the things that his administration is doing. So he can't really talk about the policies, because to talk about the policies means, either you spin it or you admit that the policies haven't actually worked. That's my liberal viewpoint, of course. So anyway.
Yeah. I think it's a very difficult administration to defend, or at least to present for a second case. So I'm sure he was facing so much pressure trying to defend an administration that's actively right now downplaying a global pandemic. So yeah, I can imagine how difficult it is for him to represent or actually defend this current administration.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mustafa, because, I had like this sort of whole list of things that I thought we could talk about today since the time we talked about joining today. And like in the last week, as usual, all this stuff got upended because President Trump got sick with COVID and was in the hospital. And now we don't really, it doesn't feel like it's very transparent about what's actually happening. What is his actual health right now? You know, I mean, what do you think, what are you all thinking about how much transparency should the White House be giving us? What are you feeling right now, given the events of the past week?
Well, I mean, let me just say something. I think you're getting lost in the weeds, and what Trump has very successfully done from the very beginning is discredit the media, and so you're going into the media rabbit hole, is what you're doing in the sense of talking about this when the average voter who are going to vote for Trump, millions of people in Pennsylvania, don't trust the media about the transparency. They just know that our president has COVID and don't know about all the details. When did he get it? And when did he, how many times has he needed oxygen and stuff like that? That is not why people will make a decision whether they're going to vote for Trump or not. And that's what I think, and Trump is very effectively basically said that the media, that somehow Fox News is not in the legitimate media, but the media is out after me. And whatever I do, it doesn't matter. They're going to make it sound bad. And so your question takes us down that rabbit hole, is what it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I agree with you. The people who were gonna vote for Trump are still gonna vote for Trump, but there is that still sliver of people, and it is a sliver, that now are sort of questioning. I think that they're questioning. Even Brian Kilmeade on Fox News has questioned the information that's coming out of the White House. So I do wonder if there is some movement because of this lack of transparency. And this lack of strength. You know, he's trying to still show a show of strength by appearing on the balcony and all the things, but it's starting, I don't know, I feel like there's a little crack in the veneer that's starting to happen. And it's because of this.
Yeah, I think what Tom said is true. He has really effectively managed to portray the media or anything that we are sharing, like this conversation we're having right now, is going to be considered fake news or fake conversation, and we're discussing just facts. It is really important to highlight that this might be a deciding factor for many people who have trusted the president just because they see him as a strong leader, as somebody who can lead them out of an economic recession. So him downplaying and actually forcing us and Pennsylvanians down into an economic hurtful. As a small business owner right now, my business is waiting on the stimulus negotiations to go through, because I have so many employees who cannot come back right now because of what's happening. So I'm a voter who's gonna care about those decisions the president is making and the recklessness of canceling negotiations in the middle of an election. So I can see the cracks happening in the White House, but at the same time I can see the conversations happening within the people who are right now looking at this and going, hey, maybe we need to stop and really rethink about how much we can trust the administration, even with the things they were claiming to be strong as, such as the economy.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he stopped the negotiations does, I mean, what do you think, Tom? I mean, doesn't that send some kind of message that something is amiss in the administration right now, in the campaign?
Well, I think the fact that he canceled the negotiations, even though, you know, they've been stalemated for months, and you know, I mean, it is a blame game. Whose fault is it that it's been stalemated for months? Is it the Democrats because they were asking for the sun, moon, and the stars, and the price tag was so big, or is it the Republicans? They both want it. I mean, they both want the stimulus package. They're all in their interests to have, except for the hardcore Republicans who don't want to spend more money. But so it's not a question of everybody is for a new stimulus package. It is the question of whether the Senate and the House can agree to it. And that has not happened so far. So I can appreciate Trump's frustration in trying to force the two of them by saying, okay, then we're done. We're not doing this, to force the two of them to come back and negotiate in a more reasonable way.
I mean,
Understand that the problem is not Trump in this case. The problem is the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate and the House not being able to agree.
yeah,
If they'd all agree on something, I don't think there's a question that Trump would sign it.
yeah. I mean, this is a super wonky thought, but you know, until he tweeted that he was going to stop the negotiations, he could still blame Congress. He could still blame Nancy Pelosi for in, you know, whatever way that he would blame her for not being able to get this done. But now that he's now on record saying, I stop it, now it's his fault. Now he can't blame them anymore.
It is, but what has happened now is that basically they're going to make another try at it.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's a high stakes game he's playing.
Yeah. I mean, he's making a pretty big bet, and
for an election, he's betting that by sort of saying that, he forces people to be grown-ups.
mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, I'm not going to make this decision. You need to make this decision now.
Yeah.
It's like raising your kids and giving them some responsibility. That's increasingly what this looks like.
Yeah, I think what some of the challenging things for me to wrap my head around was the recklessness of how he just tweeted. I mean, everybody expects that from the president, but not when the economy and the lives of many Americans depend on it. So I do agree that the Senate and the House didn't agree with it, but he's at the end of the day, the buck stops with him, and he is the president of the United States. And some of the language he used in that tweet of saying after he wins the election really is a scary language for somebody who is part of a democracy.
Yeah. You know, I actually try to not talk about Donald Trump too much, because at the end of the day, it's really about the American people. It's really about, you know, our democracy and how we participate in it, and whatever issues we have with polarization and etc. All those problems continue to exist no matter who wins on November 3rd, you know, 2020. What, you know, I don't know, like what are Pennsylvanians thinking about, you know, how we're going to get past the next step after November 3rd? What happens after November 3rd, regardless of who wins?
We wake up and life goes on. I mean, there's no big immediate change.
Yeah.
It's a question of,
yeah, not November 4th, but long
it's a question of how, you know, the choices then that the president makes. I think I've had an opportunity to visit Europe a lot, and Germany particularly. And what I've come to realize in many conversations and working with cities, that there's really a fundamental difference in how we govern ourselves. I would say, you know, as in America, we believe that we have a God-given right to carry guns, and we have a God-given right to do what we want with our land in terms of development and everything. Whereas in Europe, and I say that because we value individual rights. It's in a much more powerful way than European countries and Canada do, in the sense that they value more community rights. So you see it in land use, you see it in guns, in the fact that people are not allowed to carry guns. And it's a community. So we emphasize individual rights over communal welfare much more. And that plays out in how we make, I mean, it has been playing out since Washington was president, of how we make choices. And that's the battle going on in this election in many ways, with Trump representing extreme individual rights. I'm going to eliminate regulations. And on the other hand, Biden emphasizing much more, we're in this together, it's a community thing. And so that's the underlying debate that's going on here, of how people, what choices people want to have. And you know, I think Biden will win, but it remains to be seen how that plays out. And so whether it's healthcare or guns or land use or lots of other choices, that differential between emphasizing community value versus individual rights is, I think, the underlying conversation going on in America today, and has been for 250 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we are moving toward a more collective mindset in our country, or is this going to just keep dividing us?
Well, I think what Trump did, I think Trump saw that, and when he ran, as an opportunity to distinguish himself, because we were, whether a Republican or Democrat, moving more and more in that direction. And I think and the more moderate Republicans saw that, and they opposed it around the edges, but not directly as Trump has done. And I think that's a debate going on in the country. And Trump supporters that I know, you know, they want to be left alone until they need something. And then they want a government stimulus, right? But they see the Democrats as getting into their lives, telling them whether they can have guns or not, or taxing them more, or telling them what kind of health care they have. So it is all about that battle of individual rights, is what it is, versus, you know, and it's complicated, because the very same people, you know, will want government subsidies, like the farmers, right? I mean, they are generally a very conservative group of people, but you know, but when they're impacted, there's huge billions of dollars of subsidies supporting them. So that's the battle going on in America now, and I think we're at an extreme moment in that discussion.
Yeah, I feel like what I think about what happens after the elections, I think we can all attest to the polarization that's happening in the country, and this tension, and how we cannot even get along with our neighbors right now, because we are Republicans or Democrats. So I feel like after the election, there has to be intentional work that needs to happen in all communities, in bringing people together, because we cannot continue existing in this divided nation, where there's so many issues that are bringing us together right now, that we should not focus on dividing each other. Yeah, so for my personal goal for after the election is to see what are some of the works that we can be done in at least bringing people together, in because we are so polarized right now, and this election cycle is not helping that division.
Yeah, there's like two threads that I want to pull out a little bit. So I'm going to go back to something that Tom said, and then I want to go back to what you just said, Mustafa, because I was thinking about, you mentioned, Tom, like the farmers who they're against intervention until they need intervention. And I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, one of the ideas is that, well, we can't have socialism in our country. But I mean, we do have a form of socialism. It's just directed toward people who already, you know, corporations and rich people. I mean, that's what, you know, those kinds of tax breaks ultimately are, is like, in my mind, is like a form of socialism. And so I don't know, like, what do you think on that? Like, I'm frustrated that the government does intervene, and does like intervenes when the auto industry was about to fall apart. Like you said, no intervention until I need the intervention, but the intervention comes at either politically expedient places, or to the wealthy and corporate interests? Just throwing that out there.
Well, I mean, part of it is, I mean, there's our underlying philosophy is, again, this is about individual, is that we value individual innovation.
Mhm.
And so companies, the Republicans believe strongly that government needs to get out of the road and let the private economy work and function well. Now, that's a myth, but it is nevertheless the underlying piece of the Republican view, that that innovation happens in a free market. And so less regulations, less government interference, and let the marketplace drive the economy. And that's the underlying. And so if I cut taxes for the rich, at least in theory, I'm giving people that are going to create more jobs, more money to create more jobs.
Yeah. Except we've seen that
And so
doesn't actually work.
That's
It is.
that's the
But it's a form
underlying.
of social, but that's a form of socialism in a way too.
And it doesn't work.
Is that? No, it's not worked. I mean, we go through these. I mean, George Bush cut taxes and we ended up with a big deficit. I mean, there's the underlying economic theory is you cut taxes, you stimulate the economy, people pay more taxes because not because you've raised taxes, but because more people are working. And so then you make up the money you've lost from cutting taxes. That theory has not worked for the last 3 times it's been used by the Republicans in cutting taxes. Reagan did it. We ended up with a huge deficit. Clinton eliminated the deficit, and then we end up back with it. So, we are very schizophrenic kind of country in that sense, is that we're trying to figure out, and that's what these elections are about. Let me go back though to 2016. I mean, I come from a place more impacted over the last 25 years by the global economy than any place in America. We made more steel in Pittsburgh than Germany, Italy, and Japan combined during World War II.
Wow.
Just to give you a sense of how big the steel industry was. It's all gone, pretty much. And millions of people lost their jobs. So between 1970 and 1990, 500,000 people left Pittsburgh, left the whole region because the steel industry had collapsed. And Donald Trump understood their anger. And what we had seen with the Democratic, and with Hillary particularly, was that sense of that East Coast elite. And what I blame our government about generally, and Biden's falling into the same trap as is Trump, is that we talk about bringing back the industry instead of talking about people getting ready for the new economy. And we're not doing that in this country. We do it very badly. Mm-hmm. And so I watch firsthand as the steel industries collapse, millions of people cut loose to be on their own about what they should do. And that was a Democrat and a Republican, and that was part of Hillary's problem, is that she epitomizes that kind of ignoring millions of people who have been caught in this global revolution that we're going through. Okay, and that's the reality in America today. I think Germany and other countries do it much better at preparing their workers, people that are going to be dislocated by globalization or trade policies, NAFTA. You heard that last night. That in that NAFTA, cost hundreds of thousands of jobs in America, but it was seen as important globally to begin to build a global economy. But and now there's a revolution against it. Uh-huh. So that's one of the big battles going on. And I would say overwhelmingly people that are voting for Trump have captured that, believe that Trump is looking out for their interests more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mustafa, you're a small business owner and you have been very, the pandemic has had a very bad effect on your business. But before that, can you talk a little bit about how you grew your business and, the environment in the economic environment in which you were able to build the business? How did policies affect you?
Mhm. So I would like, so 2020 has been a very rough year for all the business owners. So I want to send all my thoughts to any business owner who is struggling right now. It's really rough. Um, so I'm a first. So I'm originally not from America. This is my first year voting. I'm becoming a citizen for the first time. Um, I lived here for 5 years, and in these 5 years, I managed to at least grow a business that was employing over 28 families. And so, so some of the reasons why I was able to successfully grow my business is because my county, even though it's really mixed in the population, either Republicans or Democrats, my county has been very supportive in accepting business owners who are not traditional in the ideas they bring. My idea of creating cultures and infusing conversation in 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 fixing the one solution that I hope America get finds a solution for, which is immigration, has been really received well by the local community and the represent. So for me, when I say the community made my business, I really mean the community, all spectrums, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. They have received my business, and that is the type of America that I wanna see and thrive in, because when an environment is welcoming and it's supportive, it makes a business owner like me become successful, which enhances the local economy. Because when you have so many people working, um, we are paying more taxes, and we're growing the local economy. So I think what made my business successful and why it grew, it, it was the benefit of the great American story of being good neighbors to each other. And that's why I panic right now when I see the division happening. And that's why I panic right now when I see the small polarization happening with all the issues happening in America right now. And I'm hoping that business owners take this moment to really reflect on what it means to support the communities that have been able that has taken us to where we are right now. So my next steps in my for my business is to really bring together the community, bring back the community, and really ask them what it means for me to bring people together, because there's so many divisions happening, and it affecting everybody's life.
Yeah, that's right. Congratulations, Mustafa. I mean, you've built so much in just a few years, and I, I really admire you for the work you've been doing. You mentioned that you moved right to Lancaster, right, 5 years ago from Somalia. Is that right?
So I was originally from Somalia, but I
Uh-huh.
spent 10 years in a refugee camp in Kenya, and
Ah,
then my family was resettled here by the United States. So we went through the refugee settlement program after spending 10 years in a refugee camp, and we got resettled here, and immediately started working, started going to my siblings started going to school, and 1 year later I started my first business, because I had encountered uh, some social media hate for simply being from another country. And I realized that in America, we have so many things happening right now. It's so easy to dismiss or cancel somebody else because they don't like you, or they don't accept you. But I used that moment to create what my business is right now. I used somebody hating on me and trying to tell me to go back to my country as a way to sit down with them and really hear the issue and what was going on, why they were hating me. I came to find out that fear and not really knowing somebody is one way to hate them. And from that moment, I realized that many Americans don't really are not full of hate. They just don't know. They don't know the people who are different to them. They don't know their stories, and it's a very important conversation to have right now, especially people who are liberals and left leaning, about the opportunity this moment is going to show us in bringing back the country or bring people together, because we also have to take the responsibility of really uh, not accepting invitations to meet somebody or talk to somebody who is either a Trump supporter or somebody who is not your liberal friend. So we really need to start opening our hearts to listening to our neighbors and listening to the people that are hardworking Americans that are trying to at least grasp this new reality of shifting the American society. They're seeing new faces, new businesses coming into their community. So the fear usually comes in there, and I think we have the opportunity to have that fear go away by opening ourselves up. So that's what I've been working on for the last 2.5 years. It's a very difficult thing to do. I know you will understand that, Felipe, because we work in the same fields, but it has been a very challenging thing.
Yeah. Tom, when you were mayor of Pittsburgh, are there a lot of immigrants in Pittsburgh? Did you come up with
Historically,
these?
there were not.
Sorry?
Historically, because our economy was collapsing,
Mm-hmm.
there was no reason for people to come here. As I mentioned, 500,000 people left. So for many years, we had essentially no immigration. Our immigration was out migration, not in migration. That has changed over the last 15 or 20 years. We have a Somalian population here. Through probably many of them came through what Mustafa just described, through a program, and actually many of them live right up the street from where I live in Pittsburgh, and so we've seen a marked increase in immigrants coming to Pittsburgh for in the last 10 or 15 years as the economy in Pittsburgh has improved dramatically. Let me just sort of riff off of that for a moment. For me, I think the two biggest failures of the Trump administration is around immigration and around environmental issues. Immigration has always been the lifeblood of America in many ways, and bringing people like Mustafa here who are ambitious and want to find a better life for themselves. And for him to do what he's done and to do it in such a cruel way, trying to stop immigration, and again, throughout the history of America, it's been the same thing. I have, there's old newspaper clippings, a couple of which I have about the Irish. When the Irish immigrants were coming here and people thought we were all drunks and didn't want to work. And it's the same rhetoric. I mean, you could put Trump back in 1850 and he would fit right in and about immigration. And so we think this is the worst time in American history, but this has been going on for 250 years. Is that sort of the last one in doesn't want anybody else coming, right? And so I think that's part of the battle of going on, and it goes back to fundamentally people's vision of the kind of country we ought to have, and I think that's why I'm going to be for Joe Biden. I mean, is he talking about a country that's much more bringing people together rather than, but understand of the last 3 election cycles, the Republicans have used these wedge issues. When Bush was running, it was about women's health and abortion. And then then it became about gay rights. And there was legislation, all state legislators all over the country introduced legislation to require marriage to be defined as between a man and a woman. And that didn't happen by accident. That happened to gin up the vote in those states, okay? And Trump in 2016 used immigration as the wedge issue. You know, build the wall, stop people from coming. And so we've watched this tactic. Now, I don't know what the wedge issue will be in 4 years, but it is a tactic the Republicans have historically used to divide the country. Not bring people together, but to divide it.
Yeah. So immigration has historically not been a political issue. So in 2016, when it became the issue, it was really sad and devastating. I'm semi feeling less anxious this election cycle, because immigration, while it's a very important topic, is not heavily focused on right now. I mean, it's saving a lot of immigrants a lot of trauma of being meeting the national headlines and the media waves. So I
interrupt you, Mustafa, because I agree that it's not being talked about as much right now, but there is stuff still happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, let me tell you. Let me tell you some of the worst things that has came out that didn't meet the national headline. Like the Trump administration slashed the refugee fiscal year quotas to less than 15,000. Historically, the numbers have been set to 100,000 to 90,000. There's over 20 million refugees around the world, and to only offer resettlement to only 15,000, while still limiting the process, eliminating offices overseas. So what the Trump administration has done successfully is work behind the scenes to dismantle the immigration system of America. And a lot of people are not paying attention because it's not hitting the waves, the media waves. So it's a double-edged sword that it's not really being talked about, because it's going to give a lot of immigrants the everyday trauma of being in the media and having to get the looks and walking around because they look different. But at the same time, because we're not part of the conversation on the national news, all these things are happening behind closed doors, and it's affecting the lives of many refugees and immigrants, because if the Trump administration successfully dismantles the immigration infrastructure, it's going to take years and years to rebuild it back. So it's one way to he's keeping at least one of his very evil campaign promises of getting rid of immigration. So I've been writing, sending letters to all of our local representatives, making them aware about why I feel like they should continue working for us. And I hope that people continue doing the same thing.
Tom, you'd mentioned that environmental issues are another thing that you're very interested in. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I mean, Trump, as you know, has put the fox in charge of the hen house. And I mean, he's dismantling regulations. The most recent one is the one on the smokestacks and in the power plants, which, you know, are by some numbers 20-25% of the problem for us with emissions. And the car, you know, the car mileage and all, and maybe this credits for electric cars. So I mean, it's a classic. It's the classic. This is the way we've always done it. We're going to continue to do it that way. And a lot of people embrace that. People are afraid of change. And when you start talking about a new economy based on green energy, I mean, that is, you know, coming from where I live, which is center of fracking. And right south of us is West Virginia, which historically has been essentially a coal mining state. they're fighting wars. You're talking about eliminating people's jobs. And the problem is you're talking about their jobs are going to be eliminated if you outlaw fracking and move away from coal, as is happening anyhow. But we're not offering, neither candidate is offering people a credible future for what replaces that. And that's that's why people voted for Trump, because he basically said, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep digging coal, and we're going to expand fracking. And so that I'm much more comfortable. You're talking about my life here. I've maybe 3 generations have been in coal mines, and my family is that way with the steel mills. My father worked in a steel mill for 51 years, and then it went away. And so we do a bad job of helping people make a transition. So when you talk about sort of a bright new future and a new economy and green energy, I'm for that. But there are millions of people that don't have a roadmap how to get there and where their lives are. And so I want to hold on to what I have.
Yeah.
Rather than take a risk my view is that what the challenge of a leader is to be able to communicate that vision so that people see a place for themselves. And we do that in a very bad way.
Have we ever done it well?
I think under Roosevelt we did. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I'm talking about Franklin Roosevelt, when we were in the midst of the Depression and millions of people had lost their jobs. He articulated a vision, and he created temporary opportunities for people to give them some hope. And so I think that's where we are. I mean, that we are talking. I mean, and I think that's Biden's challenge. And assuming he wins, will be his challenge. Is if you're going to begin to talk about a new future, then you need to begin to give people a reason that they can get there. And so the environmental stuff, I think, will be the hardest. What Trump has done will be the hardest to roll back, because he's set in motion, eliminating these regulations, and has set in motion rules that are going to be very hard to undo.
Yeah, I think that's right. I want to go back a little bit to what Mustafa was talking about earlier about polarization and how we fix polarization. I'm with Mustafa. Like, I run a project in which we're trying to bring people together across the political divide. We do it with using art and doing it over food, breaking bread together. And so I have this sort of similar idealism, Mustafa, of like, if we could just talk to each other, we could break this narrative around the polarization industrial complex that is trying to keep us, that profits from keeping us apart, when in fact most Americans actually are moderate, actually do want to talk to each other, and that's who we've got to reach. We've got to reach around the very loud polarized ends. Tom, do you think that Mustafa and I are maybe too idealistic, too maybe naive, or do you think that what do you think? Is this possible that we can break through this noise?
Yeah, no, I mean, at one level you can. It's in the details. Do I think leaders in the Black community and police officers can sit and break bread? Yes, but then what's the to do? And it's in the to do where people have disagreements. So idealism. I mean, I was a mayor, right? So idealism, I'm an idealistic person. I got into politics, was in the Peace Corps, okay? So I'm very idealistic. But when you run a city, there's a practical thing. People shoot each other. You need to catch the bad guy. That idealism doesn't stop that from happening. And people get robbed, and and streets need to get paved. And so there's all kinds of things that have to happen that idealism doesn't matter. I mean, I think when you're running a city, the label of Democrat or Republican, liberal or progressive doesn't work.
Mhm.
If you understand what I mean,
Yeah.
it's the practical nature of how things happen. In Lancaster City, for example, from where it was 20 years ago to now is a remarkable story. It's a great, it's a great city now. It was not as always like this.
Mhm.
I just was there recently, Mustafa.
Yeah, well, you need to come back and
Great
visit us.
city. Yeah, you have a lot going on downtown with the market house and lots of development. So those things don't happen by accident in cities. They happen because leaders, both public and private, create a welcoming. So idealism, I don't know where idealism fits in that, as you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the practical nature of how government runs.
yeah. I'm thinking more about how our everyday people interact on just be neighbor. The neighboring of America has just disappeared, and it seems to me like there has to be intentional work that has to be done, where people have to actively start doing these efforts to bring people to understand that, hey, we are all we're all Americans, and we are trying to make sure we're all having a very peaceful and normal life for all of our families. And the minute we start eliminating the othering and the hate towards the people who don't agree with you, I feel like it starts creating space for people to then come to a common solution as to what what how we move forward. But what has been happening is that America has, as an immigrant, as somebody who has been living here for 5 years, I have noticed that there is not a neighboring, there's not a system in place in America that allows people to just be neighbors. We're all individually idealistic, and we're all in our all small boxes and small silos within our own communities. That it's very easy for people to come and polarize or cause divisions. So my suggestion, or my opinions, or my 2 cents is that if we try to get rid of that siloing or isolation in part of America, and we really start neighboring each other, then we can really start seeing the amazing potential of what it means to be neighbors, and how we can find growth and peace for our communities.
I like sort of this hopeful, well, semi-hopeful. I
Thank
want to end on a hopeful note. What
you.
are you hopeful for the future, Tom?
I guess, go ahead. What I'm hopeful for is much what Mustafa said, is that we would begin to create a climate of accepting differences and tolerance, and begin to build a sense of neighborhood. Remember, Fred Rogers is from Pittsburgh. And he actually supported my first mayoral campaign.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's about the neighborhood, isn't it, Mustafa? It's about how do you build that sense of neighborliness. And I think that happens in cities, and it happens in neighborhoods and communities. And that's why I believe that the most important level of government where you can create that kind of is at the local level, is in Lancaster or Pittsburgh. I mean, the bigger cities, and even in Pittsburgh, there are 90 neighborhoods. And so you would have really, what I find when I was mayor is that those neighborhoods are very, very identifiable and very committed. And so you begin to build that sense of community on that, so that people accept differences. I always remember a number of years ago, just in the beginning of the AIDS crisis, these friends of ours who were gay had moved into this row house, and on either side were working class, sort of tough truck drivers and stuff like that. And the one man came down with AIDS, and several of them, women in the neighborhood, ended up bringing food over to them and everything. And you know, it would be, you would think they would be so disapproving of this gay couple, but on the other, what really happened is that they became part of the whole family of the street and the neighborhood. And I think that's the kind of sense of community that you want to see happen, regardless of people's differences in race, creed, nationality, sexual orientation, that you get accepted.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, I agree too.
That's
Well said.
motivated for me for 30 or 40 years, so from the Peace Corps forward.
Yep, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that note. Well, you know what? I think that we should keep our eye on Lancaster, because one day Mustafa is going to be the mayor of Lancaster. I'm calling it right now.
All
And I will help you run your campaign or whatever you need me to do.
right after I run your presidential election.
No, it's a great city. It's really turned around a lot. Do you know anything about Lancaster, Philly?
Actually, I think she has.
I've visited several times because we're going to be working together. So I love it. I think it's one of the most interesting places I've been in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the market downtown and the sense of community, and it's just, where do you have your business?
In downtown. Lancaster I love my city, and let me give you just two interesting facts about why it's a very cool city. We have been named as the refugee capital of America in 2017 because our county resettles 20 times more refugees per capita than any other place in America. And there has been a lot of talk of tying the economic growth and the change in Lancaster County as directly tied to the increase in immigration, but also it leaves the room for a lot of polarization to happen in my own community. So the city is really amazing in really being neighborly to each other, and I feel like that talks to why we have been successful in coming out of an economic a recession, to being the best, to increasing our tourism, to increasing our everything. So yeah, I'm a very, very amazing advocate for my city, and if you ever want to visit Lancaster, is your place.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. This has been an awesome and interesting conversation. I really appreciate it.
Good luck.